The Wehrmacht, the German military of the Second World War, is nowadays mostly known for its powerful tanks, which have entered the realm of legend probably more than they deserve, such as the Tiger or Panther. But it is a lesser-known fact that Nazi Germany also produced a large plethora of vehicles and modifications, some in large numbers, some almost completely unknown today. So here are 10 German World War II armored vehicles, of which at least around 50 were produced and of which you have probably never heard about. This list is not in any order and does not represent any kind of ranking. Let us know in the comments how many you knew before watching this video. But before that, a word from today's sponsor, Raid Shadow Legends, a free-to-play battle arena with over 600 champions from unique factions, each with their own history, like the High Elves. They've been around for thousands of years in the game, helping the humans form civilizations and defeating a huge orc horde. But things got twisted when the Lord of Darkness turned some elves to the dark side and started a civil war. The Civil War nearly ended the elves, but they survived, rebuilt, and are now stronger than ever. Their best heroes include Ithos and Tatura Rimehide, which is probably the closest thing to a tank in the game. Ethos is one of the best campaign farmers thanks to his powerhouse AoE attacks. And this month is huge for Raid. They just released a brand new faction, the Sylvan Watchers. And Raid's got a full lineup of events, including a new season of the Forge Pass, where you can get your hands on some of the most powerful gear in the game. Furthermore, just click the link in the description to scan the QR code to get unique bonuses worth $30, a free epic champion, Terrell, a lot of silver, 1 energy refill, 1 XP boost, and 1 ancient shard. All this treasure will be waiting for you there. The Instandsetzungskraftwagen I was the first serial-produced German maintenance tank. This vehicle was built on the chassis of both the Panzer I, Ausführung A and B, and was introduced around the same time as the Panzer I, Germany's first serial-produced tank, as the tank proved to be vulnerable to mechanical stress and tended to break down often. As a result, some spare Panzer I chassis were used to carry equipment and spare parts to help with maintenance on the tanks. Initially, each tank company had one maintenance tank, but due to the increasing number of tank companies, new ones were built. These were modernized versions with a canvas covering to protect the equipment from weather, while later versions featured either an entirely metal or soft-skin superstructure. In total, an estimated 150 vehicles were built, but most of them were lost by around 1943. Even before the war, the German army wanted a fully tracked ammunition transport vehicle. The development of one was initiated in September of 1937. It had to be capable of carrying 500 kilograms in a storage bin positioned to the rear part of the vehicle, with an additional 500 kilograms in a trailer. The final contract for designing and producing such vehicle was eventually given to Borgward from Bremen, leading to the development of the small, fully tracked armored ammunition carrier VK3.01. While the production of the first such vehicles was meant to commence in May 1939, the project was delayed until the end of the year. Following testing, additional changes were required. The Borgward 44 horsepower engine was deemed too weak and overheated so it was replaced by a slightly stronger Borgmann 55 horsepower engine. In addition, the storage bin was redesigned. Borgward was instructed to build 400 of these vehicles. During the production run, from around October 1941 to February 1942, only 28 VK3.02s, along with some 20 301s, were produced. These were used to form the 45-vehicle-strong ammunition supply company 801, and were allocated to the 1st Infantry Division in June of 1943. Their performance with this division proved to be satisfying, and they remained in use up to the Soviet Bagration offensive in 1944, when all were lost. There were also some projects intended to refit these vehicles as weapons carriers with a recoilless gun or a 5cm pack gun. While 2 specimens were built and combat tested, no production orders for either were given. With the introduction of the StuG III assault gun in independent battalions, a designated ammunition carrier was also needed. The requirements were for a cross-country, mobile armored ammunition carrier that was also able to tow a trailer. In order to save time and money in development, the chassis of the Sonderkraftfahrzeug 10 light half-track was used. The actual serial production series was based on a shortened chassis, which was similar but not identical to that of the Sonderkraftfahrzeug 253 and 250. Designated the Sonderkraftfahrzeug 252 ammunition carrier, the 7.5 cm rounds for the StuG III were stored in the deck on the back of the vehicle, and in a smaller extra trailer. Production began in June 1940 after the campaign in France, and vehicles were assigned to the first StuG III Ausführung A's, which had already seen action in France. In 1941, each StuG battery should, in theory, have had 3 252s. By 1942, 413 vehicles were completed, but their production was cancelled due to the high costs of having an individual chassis built for only one task. They were replaced by the Sonderkraftfahrzeug 250-6 ammunition carriers. The Sd.Kfz 247 Ausführung A and B were heavy cross-country armored personnel carriers, with the development of the A variant starting in 1934. The idea was to transport higher-level commanders through difficult terrain in an armored car based on the chassis of an already existing vehicle. The chassis of the Kraftfahrzeug 69 and 70 personnel carriers were used. The A variant had 6 wheels, with 2 sets of wheels in the back and 1 set in the front. It was armored with a 6 to 8 mm thick superstructure around the chassis. The armor was sloped to prevent penetration from small arms while also being as cheap as possible. It had no armament and no radio, but this was later fixed on some vehicles when they underwent field modifications. The A was extensively used during parades, with divisional or brigade commanders seen inside them. 10 A's were built until 1938, when development of the B was started. The concept was similar, with some changes to the appearance. The B now only had 4 wheels and featured the unitary chassis 1, which was used on many other German armored cars. This, together with a new upgraded engine, made the B superior to the previous model. However, it was also never without radio or armament. At the war's start, the A's were organized into reconnaissance headquarters battalions and infantry divisional HQ units. The first Bs were in service in the summer of 1941, when they participated in the invasion of the Soviet Union. With up to 56 built, the B was used more than the A, and it was even repurposed as a reconnaissance vehicle. Several field modifications were carried out to outfit the B with radios, and many Bs received MG-34s and 42s for protection. By 1943, most 247s were lost and were replaced by simpler vehicles. During the war, Germany developed and employed a series of remote-controlled explosive charge carriers. These consisted of a small, fully tracked chassis equipped with a large, disposable explosive charge. Once a target was identified, they were to approach it, release their explosives, and return to safety. In the second half of 1943, a new, completely disposable vehicle with a huge 300-kilogram explosive payload was developed. This vehicle was designated the Mittlerer Ladungstrager, also known by its nickname, Springer. It was constructed using many components from the Sonderkraftfahrzeug II, such as its suspension. It only had space for a driver who was positioned in the rear of the vehicle and was protected by folding armor plates, although he only would have been on board when out of combat. While the production of a small experimental series of 16 vehicles was completed in September of 1944, actual production began in October of that year and lasted until February of 1945. In total, only 50 vehicles were ever completed. They appear to have been never issued to any frontline unit or used in combat. Initial German attempts to develop mobile anti-aircraft vehicles included adding light machine guns to various vehicles. An early design included using the Sd.Kfz 10 half-track chassis armed with a 2 cm Flak 30, and later a Flak 38. A lesser-known vehicle design that fulfilled the same purpose used the slightly larger Sd.Kfz 11 chassis, but was armed with the same 2 cm guns. In contrast to its predecessor, the Sd.Kfz 11 anti-aircraft vehicle received a cabin with better protection. The contract for the production of 2,400 vehicles was given to the Auto Union AG of Chemnitz. Production began in March of 1944, and by February 1945, only 604 were built. An additional 150 vehicles were meant to be built from March to April of 1945, but it is not clear if this order was even implemented. The Schwimmpanzerkampfwagen II, or the Swimming Tank II in English, was an amphibious swimming tank based on the chassis of the Panzer II, with development starting in 1938. A trial vehicle was completed in 1940 and it was tested by Krupp. In August of 1940, when Operation Sea Lion was in the planning phase for the invasion of the British Isles, 52 Schwimmpanzer IIs were available in 4 special battalions. The tank itself was modified so that all visors, vision slits, and holes in the tank were sealed off. On the left and right sides of the tank, 2 large pontoons were attached to the tank via mounts which were in turn bolted onto the hull and superstructure. However, these pontoons were easy to damage, so they would only be attached if need be. In order to attach the pontoons, the tank was reversed into the pontoons, and then they were locked into position. This version of the Schwimmpanzer II was less of a swimming tank and more of a floating tank, as it had no propellers or methods to steer the tank through deep water. These Schwimmpanzer IIs were designated as old versions, as a new version of the Schwimmpanzer II was developed in the winter of 1940. The newer version was able to steer and swim through deep water. The first trial vehicle was built in spring of 1941 and was again tested by Krupp. Like the previous version, the Panzer II itself was completely sealed. The pontoons now encircled the tank, similar to a support structure. The mounting process was also similar to the older model. At the rear, the tank was connected with a gear to the pontoon. The propellers were driven by the tracks, while an additional steering rudder on the pontoon was controlled by the driver inside the tank. A second trial vehicle was completed, but serial production never began. When Operation Sea Lion was abandoned, the tanks went into service during the invasion of the Soviet Union as part of numerous divisions. While some were used in amphibious tasks during river crossings, most of them did not receive their swimming equipment and were used as regular Panzer IIs. The Panzerbeobachtungswagen III was a sub-variant of the Panzer III medium tank intended for artillery observation. Development started in 1942 due to the newly developed Hummel and Vespa SPGs needing a mobile armored observation vehicle. The Panzer III was slowly being replaced by the Panzer IV, but could still provide adequate protection for spotters. The modifications included the removal of armament except for a single MG-34 and a ball mount and a modified Panzer III turret. There was also a mock-up gun next to the MG mount to give the impression that the tank was still armed. The ammunition was removed, and a slightly upgraded TSR-1 periscope was fitted into the turret. The observation tanks were organized within the artillery battalions, with 2 vehicles present in each Hummel and Vespa battery. The crews were tasked with recording the shots and their trajectory to better adjust fire. The German army was one of the first to use radio-controlled vehicles in numbers. These were mostly used to destroy reinforced targets and clear minefields. In order to effectively operate these from a distance by radio, the Germans reused Panzer Is and later Panzer IIIs as the lead vehicle. By 1942, both the Panzer I and III were deemed obsolete, so another solution was needed to fill the role. Given their availability, it was logical to reuse the well-known StuG III. From April to June of 1943, some 61 StuG IIIs were converted. While some older models were used for evaluation, combat units usually used the StuG III-G chassis. These vehicles received additional radio equipment, which included a transmitter and a control unit. This control unit had a joystick which worked with various switches to provide the commands responsible for moving, starting, and releasing the payload. The StuG III's main armament remained fully functional, and it was able to provide fire support. A nominal strength of the radio-controlled demolition carrier units included 10 StuG IIIs and 48 Bolkwart B4 Ladungstragers. 2 such units were used during the Battle of Kursk in 1943, supporting the large Ferdinand assault guns. While they managed to clear the Soviet minefields, many of the demolition carrier vehicles were immobilized or destroyed by the heavy Soviet defensive positions. The surviving vehicles were sent back to Germany and assigned to a few Tiger-operated units. The StuG IIIs that were used in this manner would remain in service up to the end of the war, seeing service on nearly all fronts. At least one StuG III Ausführung B was modified into a lead tank and was used to remotely control and carry the small Bolkwart 4. For this variant, the gun was removed and improved radio equipment with a large 2-meter-long antenna rod were added. In the later stages of the war, the German army wanted to increase the mobility of its towed artillery. In January of 1944, a self-propelled vehicle designed by Hanomag was presented to Hitler and army officials. It consisted of a single, fully rotating 10.5 cm Leutgefeldhaubitze 18-40 howitzer, mounted on an unprotected Sd.Kfz 11 half-track. This design was deemed sufficient for the job, and the project given the green light. A firing test was conducted in March of 1944, and no major problems were noted. Hanomag received a production order of 4 vehicles for troop testing and 50 additional Zero Series vehicles. These were slightly different, as they were partially protected by armored shields. By November of 1944, the 4 vehicles intended for troop testing were completed. The production of the 50 vehicles proved problematic, as Hanomag facilities were bombed by the Allies. The first 5 vehicles were completed in January of 1945. The remaining vehicles were to be delivered by the end of May, but it is unclear if this was completed. In addition, the general performance of this vehicle is unknown. Well, that's it for this video. Let us know in the comments how many of these vehicles you already knew and which one surprised you the most. Also, please remember to like and subscribe. If this video does well, we might just do part 2. So until next time, keep us in your sights.